you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am Rich Barris, your host, the People's Pundit. So it is guilty across the board for Derek Chauvin in the trial over the murder of George Floyd, now it's the guilty verdicts are in, so that's the official record. Despite what our personal opinions are, what yours may not be. I'll just say this before I get into the public opinion stuff that I want to talk about. There was a right way and a wrong way to do this. Of course, we went with the wrong way because typically, and I think this is worth saying, typically the media doesn't like these cases. The cases like the instance of the death of George Floyd, because too many people agreed. Whether or not you really thought it was murder, it was intentional, he intended to do bodily harm and injury to George Floyd. Most people didn't like the 8 minutes and 30 seconds of a knee on the neck. All right? Now, America can't agree on things if it's meant to tear us apart. So you need to inject all of this other stuff into it to cause wedges, to stuff wedges between us. Because, of course, guilty verdicts were not the end game here. Justice was not the end game here. We heard that from a host of politicians, including Nancy Pelosi, who thanked George Floyd for being murdered. One of the most outrageous things I've ever heard a politician say. What she said is irresponsible, no matter, or reckless, or just ridiculous, no matter what you think happened in this case. If you think George Floyd was murdered and what happened yesterday was justified and Derek Chauvin should rot in a prison for the rest of his life, it still doesn't make sense. Thank you for being murdered. If you think that George Floyd probably died from ingesting too many drugs because he was poor health, and Derek Chauvin was a human sacrifice in our attempt to hold the peace. It still doesn't work. No way, from no point of view, coming from at this from any point of view, still doesn't make sense out of what Nancy Pelosi said. The only way it makes sense is if you understand what the point of this case really was. And that was to score political points. Worse, really. Because it's beyond scoring political points, so I hope you go out and vote for us. I hope you destabilize our society so we can affect the change we cannot seem to affect at the ballot box. And that is very different from some of the cases that we have seen in the past. So, while last night, if you were to watch the national media, all right, you were to think universally that all Americans are happy, it's a celebration, and that everybody sees this straight. And even though we may not have got there the right... How many times did you hear this last night? Even though we may not have got there the right way, we still reached the right conclusion. How many times did you hear that last night? Okay, including on Fox News, who was celebrating the conviction across the board of this police officer. Okay? You heard it. That was about, unless you watch Newsmax, that was about as challenging as you saw in the so-called mainstream media, which is really just a bunch of propagandists, political propagandists. You would never know that when this first happened and the video came out, people were appalled. And 6 in 10 Americans roughly said they believed it was murder. But as more evidence came out, and as time gave emotions the chance to recede a little bit, that collapsed. In a year, it collapsed by more than roughly a quarter. And it went from 60% believing that George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin to under 40%. 36%. You would never know that if you were listening to the hive mind collectively jump around in jubilation over the ruination of somebody's life. Look, I think this case was always a gray area, and I'll move into the public opinion here soon, and we're going to take a lot of questions because I understand people have high emotions today, and I want to have a discussion.
And seriously lagging no matter what I did.
And I want to have a discussion. Are we really?
Yes, seriously.
Okay.
I'm woosahing it.
Yeah. Still may have been too high of a resolution. Yeah, I don't think, honestly, in truth, I don't think that, stop doing that. I don't think that no matter what you do, you can stream that high. Yep. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. All right, but in any event, let's get back to this here. The bottom line is, I think there was a right and a wrong way to charge this case and prosecute this case. And I think that there was a lot of gray here, you know, and that you really could have gotten to that one charge. I think a broad spectrum, political spectrum, could have gotten to that one charge. What the jury said yesterday was that he basically intended to kill this man on camera. Minnesota, by the way, the state of Minnesota is the only state where you have these murder and manslaughter charges, where the prosecution is basically allowed to shotgun charge you, which is what some lawyers have called it. They're allowed to shotgun charge you, and whatever sticks. Worse, you could actually be found guilty of both. It doesn't really make any sense if you're a person of reason. You either meant to kill him or meant to do bodily harm, or something you did involuntarily ended up in the death of another person. It cannot be both. It's like asking people to think white and you can paint a wall white and black at the same time, and the wall can be both white and black at the same time. It cannot be. Two things cannot be true like that. But in any event, you would never know from the media coverage how the country thinks about this. So this idea that we're going to somehow heal is flawed for two reasons. This talk about healing is flawed for two reasons. One, the objective of those who wanted to hang Derek Chauvin out to dry was never to heal. Guilty verdicts in the name of justice was never the end goal. All you had to do was shut up and listen to all of the groups who pushed this yesterday. Black Lives Matter tweeted yesterday that this still wasn't good enough. It took too long. And went on to name a slew of other problems with the system we live in, the system by which we agreed to be governed, the very social contract that governs the kind of society we live in, a self-governing, free society, with the principles of presumption of innocence, due process, trial by jury, and basically individual freedom. That is their problem. Their problem is not that there is a genocide of black men on the streets of America at the hands of police officers. Their problem is the very system itself, the system of government itself, the society itself. And I think it's important that we're honest about the proposed alternatives here before we just pay lip service to all of these cute little platitudes and rush and push each other over to make comments that basically prove I'm more virtuous than you. See, I'm more understanding than you. They are not proposing a fair judicial system. They are proposing the eradication of one. They are not proposing a fair and safer society. They are proposing a revolution in one. They don't care if you hold police accountable. They don't want police. Mm-hmm. Did you hear the chant, all police are bastards?
Not some.
Not Derek Chauvin. All police are bastards.
Not the few that are corrupt.
Not the few that, yeah. I mean, because who are we kidding? Yeah. There is no profession where there are not bad actors.
I don't care.
But I'm sick of this. I am sick of this, like, trashing, paying lip service to them. And then trying to brush that over with, but don't get me wrong, the 99.9% of police officers are good in this country. First of all, who pulled that stat out of their butt and made it a talking point? We don't know what percentage is or not. The vast majority of course. That sounds like Obama. 99.9% of Muslims are nonviolent. That's not true. That's not even remotely true. In fact, Pew Research has shown, above all, that is not remotely true. So, the bottom line is here, I think it's important that we not get caught up in either side. The important thing is that this was never going to be enough for the people who drove this story, for the people who burned down major cities last summer. It was never going to be enough because the goal was never justice. They don't even know what justice means. How many of them have read Marcus Cicero? Have you gone out to the street on a Black Lives Matter protest and tried to engage with somebody over Plato and Cicero and Aristotle? The conversation would be dry. They don't know what justice means. They don't believe in the presumption of innocence, yet we're supposed to believe in the presumption of jurors following the instructions of the judge. Mm-hmm. We don't have to sequester because there's a presumption that they follow jury instructions. Are you joking? Even if they don't go home and read the news, their family does. Their friends do. The Star Tribune essentially published and published a preemptive hit list on these jurors. Here are the bios of the jurors, just in case. Wink, wink. This was basically the worst of this justice system. Whether you agree Derek Chauvin was guilty or not, Scott Adams probably had the most intelligent tweet yesterday, or the most intelligent reaction, because he did a video on it. And he's got a great locals page. I'll hat tip him on his locals page. But he really nailed it. There is a very fine line between justice and human sacrifice. And yesterday we sacrificed a human being to appease the mob, in the hope that we could avoid violence, in the hope that they would go away. And I just want to talk before, they don't even represent, the they I'm speaking about, as you saw with the public polling project we did, they don't even represent a majority of Black Americans. In fact, they don't even represent a majority of Black urban Americans. Please tell us whether or not you trust each institution. A great deal, a fair amount, not very much, none at all, unsure, or are you unsure and have no opinion? A great deal in Black urban America, 17.3%. A fair amount, 38.4%. So a majority either said a great deal or a fair amount in urban America. Urban America. So we sacrificed the life of a human being, the life and freedom of a human being, because he's not going to be safe, this guy. Not that I'm like over here sympathizing with Derek Chauvin, because, by all accounts, the guy was an ass. All right, can we just be real?
He messed up.
He's still, but he had a long history. Mm-hmm. Robert is right. He had a long history of problems. So I don't want to come across like I'm being sympathetic to him. I'm being sympathetic to the idea of a defendant. Any defendant. I finally found myself in agreement with Mark Garagos last night for the first time ever.
I know.
Where he had been on the defending side for the longest time, and now he wants now he's doing different work, and he tells people, be careful what you wish for, because this may be one of your family members or one of your friends if in the future, if you get what you want to get. So we took a guy who was an imperfect law enforcement officer, and we sacrificed him. Meanwhile, we reshaped, reinvented, repersonified a man who by all accounts was a lag on society, was not a good person, was not a productive citizen. I'm sorry, I'm probably not allowed to say that the day after this trial, but that's just tough because it is what it is. This is a man who, by some accounts, put a gun in the belly of a pregnant woman, and we lionized him. That's why I said allegedly. By some accounts, allegedly. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. He was a criminal, regardless. Was he not a career criminal? Was he not a career criminal, regardless? Mm-hmm. And we reshaped him, and we lionized him into a hero. We now saw him put in the same sentence last night as people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. This is what we've become. Mm-hmm. This is what we've become. And I think that I'm at the point of real concern because we can't replenish the right. Look, the goal, like I said, is not justice. The goal is they will never get defund the police. Let me put it this way. They will never get defund the police through electorally in any broad fashion. That will never happen. My God, even Reuters has that at 18% support. That will never happen. But you could chase police officers out of the profession to the point where they're ineffective. The pipeline is badly lagging for police officers, for new law enforcement officers. How many months at the academy? How many months when you're out of the academy in a patrol car with a more experienced officer? It takes time. It's like it takes time to train a soldier. It takes time to train police officers. There is a significant shortage of people who even want to become police officers. Surprise, surprise. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was a problem that even predates all of this war on police stuff. It does. And that was due to cuts when we had economic hardship, which never really rebounded under Barack Obama. The economy never did really come back. Post-recession, governments, state, local, and federal across the board, their budgets never bounced back. I think people have to understand there was a point where we did live within our means and we did have enough for basic and essential services. The recession killed that, put state, local, and federal governments deeply into debt. And I hate that word, austerity. But they did force them to cut back on education, on law enforcement, on fire services. It did. And we never really rebounded from that. Sure as hell, our budgets never came back. Mm-mm. So if you wanted to destroy the modern system of law enforcement in this country, you don't have to do it by popular referendum. You don't have to do it by legislation. You can do it by what you're seeing, by what you're seeing right now. Who, in God's name, would tell their child to become a police officer today?
I wouldn't.
Who, in God's name? We have, I don't want to get into it, but this dates back to when Donald Trump tried to hold a rally in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And you know what I'm talking about. And these police officers, two of which I know, were just forced to get kicked out of them. They couldn't do anything when it was clear it was an organized effort to riot, to get Donald Trump to cancel that event. And they were told by their superiors that City Hall said to just take it. He was gone 6 months later. He already saw he was gone 6 months later. He already saw the handwriting on the wall. There was no need for him to put himself in danger anymore because he was this is the demographics of that industry. There are so many of them that are up on their time. They either have reached it a few years ago, or are going to reach it soon where they could just say, you know what, I'll take the early retirement and I'm out of here. Because the cities and local governments were forced in an effort to try to save money to give people, it's cheaper to give people an early retirement than it is to keep them on. Mm-hmm. So he had that option and he said, I'm out. If you think that's not going to happen the scary part is he was older. We're coming up on when the bulk of that really will have an impact. So it's very, very convenient for these defund the police people to, the timing of it is very convenient. All right, so with that, and I know it's lagging a little bit. I see it's catching up a little bit, but with that, just be patient for Laura to get questions, because I know there's a lot of people who are probably really angry today or even scared, and let's just have let's have a little bit of a discussion. I did want to talk about what I meant. Hold on one second. We're getting there, folks. I promise. Hold on one second. I forgot to tell them about why I was not considering that these people were going to let Derek Chauvin off. And everybody was like, how did you know? And when I said it was a quick verdict, people were like, but in Casey Anthony was a 10-hour deliberation. This was OJ and this, and people were bringing up all this other stuff. First of all, I'm talking trials, what I'm talking about when I say the literature, I'm not just talking about TV trials, like things that were made for court TV and are on, cable and network news every night. There are trials every day that, tons of that never see the light of day, that you never hear about. And typically, when a jury comes back that quickly, especially when they are meant to deal with multiple charges, when their task, when their goal is to deal with multiple charges, typically it's a bad sign for the defendant. It means they just said guilty across the board, and that's a wrap. In Minnesota, there was, and in this trial in particular, there were some different circumstances. First and foremost, in none of those other cases were the jurors faced with the very, very real, and I would say imminent, inevitable consequence of their neighborhoods burning to the ground if they came back with not guilty verdicts on not just one, all three, any of them. If any of those verdicts would have came back not guilty, we would have saw serious violence. By the way, the fact that we didn't last night is a testament to the fact that the Democratic Party really does control BLM. Really does, clearly. Or at least surrogates of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. The Al Sharptons, the Ben Crumps, right? The all of these guys who claim that I don't have any control of this. You're full of crap. Because you managed to hold it together last night, didn't you? Because you knew optically a riot and the burning of a city would have been a problem. The night before, though, churches were burning. It also was cold. It's also important to these people who go out there and protest professionally, they don't love the cold, folks. They do not love the cold or extreme heat, for that matter. But the cold has always been a real issue with crowds. All right. And then there was never the threat. There was never the threat by elected officials. There was never the tainting of the jury pool in such a manner we have seen before. We have seen presidents weigh in and make inappropriate comments, but I think Joe Biden went way beyond anything we had ever seen before. Even when Donald Trump said Bo Bergdahl was guilty as hell, that was a military process. It wasn't a jury trial. The media had a canary over that. And on and on and on and on. Very extenuating circumstances in this case. And then also in Minnesota, like I referenced before, it was easy for them. They didn't have to deliberate. Once they came up with the second-degree murder verdict of guilty, the rest were guilty. Because in Minnesota, you can do that. They didn't really have to deliberate, folks, over whether or not it's rational to find somebody guilty of two different state of minds. Mm-hmm. You're either negligent or you're malicious. You cannot be both. But hell, why not? In Minnesota, it allows it. Let's fry this son of a gun. Third, the jury in the Casey Anthony case. Demographically, and this is going to come across bad, but that's tough crap. That's big data. The jury in the trial of Casey Anthony, demographically, by life experience, demonstrated a greater capability to deliberate. I told you it didn't matter about all of these little, the prosecution said this. Did you hear that? That was really witty. The defense said this. Did you hear that? It's really witty. Anybody with experience could have told you during voir dire, this was bad for the defense. The prosecution got the jury, not only that it needed, it got a jury that doesn't even reflect the city. The greater demographics of the city. I'm not just talking about black, white. It is so much more complicated than that. Race, age, gender, income. They got everything they needed. And you could tell during voir dire, the ones that did seemed to have what we talked about, our inner loci or locus of control. didn't want to be on that jury. We talked about it when it happened. Did you hear juror number respond to this? We're not going to go back and say it.
Yeah.
That is a person who would have found Derek Chauvin, that man and or woman, there were several of them, they didn't want to be on this jury because they already had their minds made up. The people who ended up on the jury had their minds made up. There were, we've done this in the past, we have gone through, when we have the ability to, the polling of jurors. When the judge says, is this your true verdict? Yes, judge, right? Mm-hmm. In the past, we have gone back to try to listen for sound cues, for audible cues, and then we'll take that and compare it later because inevitably, especially in high-profile cases, you will get juror interviews later, right? Mm-hmm. And later, like in the case of Scott Peters and Casey Anthony, later people will interview them and they will say, what happened back there? Was everybody a guilty verdict? Folks, I can tell you I heard one, maybe two audible cues that indicated to me, maybe three, Laura said maybe three, that indicated to me that there were jurors who were actually willing to deliberate on not guilty verdicts, but were bullied by the majority of the jury to come in with the guilty verdict. And I'm being generous here. Generous.
And I'm sure
really? I'm sure of only one. And it was a woman. And you could tell, by the way, and what am I talking about right now? When the judge asks, is this your true your true and accurate verdict, whatever, however they word it in their particular courtroom, you will hear the juror an audible clue that the juror does not like it, but has agreed to it. And in many cases, Robert and I talked about this on What Are the Odds so many times. There is the holdout is an exceedingly rare juror. In the end, they want to go home. In the end, they want to be affable, right? In the end, they just want to get it done and they want to go. They get bullied. Like the man in the Scott Peterson case, I'm trying to come up with examples for people. He didn't believe that dog was legitimate science. But he couldn't get anybody to agree, and that woman, Strawberry, was a bully. And he wasn't exactly an alpha male, and he eventually said, all right, guilty. To this day, he has problems. All right, moving on. Let's get to some of these. So, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no.
It's not a surprise. He was going to be guilty on at least 2 or 1, but I thought I told Laura he's fried across the board. I told you he's fried. All right.
So what I wanted to discuss was our
discuss. I'm going to get a Nicorette.
Oh, well,
yeah.
It was going to be our take on
I got you.
Gutfeld.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Some people I don't know.
I think Greg,
we took it differently.
Laura and I took it very differently, what Greg Gutfeld said. I think Greg Gutfeld was trying to prove a point. And so does Laura. I don't believe Greg Gutfeld really is happy that a man was guilty on all 3 counts when the man was clearly not guilty on all 3 counts. I think the point he was trying to make is that the jury breathed a collective sigh of relief by coming across with all 3 guilty verdicts. It is not your home or your neighborhood that is burning if you're hard on these jurors. And that's the point he's trying to make. And he's, my neighborhood was ransacked. My neighborhood saw rioting and looting. So justice is secondary to me. I don't want my house to burn down. I don't want my family to get injured. I don't want, God forbid, to find myself in a position where the police have abandoned me and I have to take out a gun and defend my family and then get prosecuted for it. I think Gutfeld was being sarcastic. I do.
He's known for
because
that
that's who he is. And I think he does get emotional sometimes. And I think this time he was emotional and didn't clear it up on purpose. I think he did that on purpose. I could be wrong and we'll see. And Laura could be wrong and we'll see. But that looked like Greg being kind of angry and making that as a way to say, you stupid idiots. That's the way I saw it with Greg.
How little
Yep.
of the justice system.
Yep. Like, that's what we've become. Get over it. That's what we've
let's
become.
sacrifice humans
Yep.
left and right
To make sure our houses
to make
don't
sure
burn.
our houses don't burn
Yep.
or our businesses don't burn.
Yep.
And it's okay as long as my
My
area is
situation is okay. Yep.
safe. So it's like, to me, they're negotiating with the mob. Like, you don't negotiate with terrorists. You don't negotiate with mobs. You don't kowtow to them. Just say, please don't hurt
But
my city.
and he's making the point that is where we are.
Where we are, yeah.
And I could be wrong, and we'll see if he clarifies it at all, but I really do believe that is what he was saying, because you saw this anger in his face and him trying to joke through that anger, because that's what he does. He's a jokester, right?
Yes.
But he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it. And he came across badly, you know? I really do think that's it, folks. I gotta say.
But I think
really
he
do
made
think
his
it is.
point. Valid
Yeah,
point.
I think he was. I think that was he was making that point on purpose. I do.
All right, so you said questions, right?
Yeah, let's just have a little bit of a discussion here.
Yeah.
This is like a rare moment where, I know a lot of people are angry. They may not just want to hear me ramble on and on, but go ahead. Let's take
All
it, because I will just about to
You're
say
about
that
to
and
go
go
on
ramble on
another
and on.
tangent,
Yep,
but
right.
that's okay. I love you. Pool Kit wants to know: are there any Antifa BLM terrorists from last year who have been convicted of murder or manslaughter?
There are people who have been charged with serious crimes. Nowhere in the realm of what it would be if the roles were reversed. Maybe they get people here or there. But in the end, you see what happened with the case of David Dorn, for instance. In the end, they're not being charged with what they really should be being charged with. Like, they start that they make the spark that lights the fire, and they should be responsible for things like the death of David Dorn, because they did that. All right. So if Derek Chauvin can be convicted of both involuntary basically a manslaughter charge, Minnesota's weird, and a second-degree murder charge, then I don't know how you can't, convict two people for things like the murder of David Dorn, the person who actually did it, and the other who started the riot that led to those conditions. But this is where we are. 6 votes yesterday, and to talk about double standards, 6 votes yesterday. Every single Democrat held firm behind Maxine Waters, while 10 abandoned Donald Trump, when it wasn't even true. It wasn't even true. Has Adam Kinzinger commented yet about the medical examiner's conclusive conclusion that Brian Sicknick was not killed by a fire extinguisher or by being beaten to death, or whatever version of events they came up with for that impeachment? Folks, it's in the official record. The death of Brian Sicknick, the officer in the Capitol Hill, is on. It made it into the official record for Donald Trump's second impeachment. And 10 Republican cowards like Adam Kinzinger voted in favor of it, even though none of it was true. Here we had a real instance, not a fabricated, a real instance of a politician inciting violence or threatening violence. Understand what Maxine Waters was saying. If the verdict doesn't come in the way we want it to, burn this place to the ground.
That's a real one.
And not one single Democrat breaks ranks.
And where's the Republicans? Outrage.
If this was the role, well, Kevin McCarthy, because they were trying to even block it. So Kevin McCarthy said, if you don't do it, I will force it. And he did force it. But if the roles were reversed, Kevin McCarthy would have taken that member and thrown them under the bus. They'd be expelled from the House of Representatives, and that would be it. They'd be gone. At the very least, censured? They would lose the committee assignments. This is a woman who is the chair of the House Finance Committee. Do you understand what I'm telling you? This woman is a chairwoman on a powerful committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. She is so stupid, she didn't even know that the companies that she had in front of her had gotten out of the student loan business years before she decided to ask them what they were doing about student loan debt. This is the low caliber, both intelligence and character, and yet every single one of them circled the wagon. They all defended her. This, by the way, about Maxine Waters, because of the scary nature of the way the information is not just censored. We're at a point now where you can't even find certain information. Maxine Waters was the cheerleader for the men who beat almost to death a truck driver with a cinder block and other weapons simply because she wanted to make the rioting less scary. These people got off. One of the defendants got a lesser charge. And back then, as it is now, people like Maxine Waters didn't even represent the views of their urban black population. Even more so. We were scouring, because I'm doing some research on something, scouring through the archives of the LA Times. And it was even more, it was even more old school back then. They found numerous people who were openly and willing to say, on the record, they were disappointed with the verdicts. And simply because of the color of their skin, we should not make excuses for their behavior. They beat that man badly. They were trying to kill him, clearly. Or trying to at least cause him bodily harm. And we shouldn't make excuses for their behavior. The same is true today. I just read you the polling results. There is not a widespread hatred of police even in urban America. But it is a significant group. A significant percentage of the population. And by the way, I tell you to take note. Look on those streets yesterday. And take a look and see how many suburban white people there were. You know, how many privileged white people were out there.
Stupid.
So just, I just want, because I don't want this to become a race thing. This has always been a distraction. It is a class thing. It is a privilege thing.
It is a house divided thing.
It really. It's a top down movement. Mm-hmm. It is not a black on white or it's not. All right,
it's not black, white, or brown.
Yeah, this is a
two-tier justice system.
That's it. This is about
that's what this is really about.
Thank you, Laura.
Justice.
Two-tier, two standards, multiple standards. Actually, because it's going to break into more than two. Hey, it will soon. Yeah. But it's a top-down thing. Just look at those crowds. It's the rich and privileged abusing the desperate and downtrodden, abusing and using. It's sick, but it's unique.
Garza on Locos said he thinks that they want the military to start policing, but look how they're reforming the military. A bunch of narcissistic idiots, and now they want to turn them all into I'm not going to say that.
Yeah,
part.
watch.
Do they just want to destroy the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, look, the bottom line is they hate the United States of America. I mean, the Black Lives Matter is an anti-American, anti-capitalist movement. Speaking of which, I will tell you about the military. We have some stuff. We have had it. I just don't know how to release it without hurting people, right? So it is very clear that there is an anti-white agenda in the U.S. military right now. It is anti-white for now. They're making it about race for now. But I got news for you, BLM. You're even in this stuff. All right? So it is most certainly anti-white, but they look at Black Lives Matter as a problem because they view them to be like optically no good. So if you don't want to scare, we got to do something with BLM because we don't want to scare white America too soon. So BLM is not good for what we're trying to do. So you're on the list too, guys. I hate to tell you, but you may be the hero on CNN, but you'll be the first one lined up against the wall. It's just true. And I want to badly release this, but
we actually have
there are radicals.
evidence.
There are radicals. Yeah, there are radicals in this administration who are working with other radicals like the Southern Poverty Law Center to target certain groups of people to push an anti-white agenda, to push an anti-American agenda. The goal is they don't like America as it stands right now. This is why I said last night in response to BLM, to that tweet, we have to be honest about what the proposed alternatives are here, because they're not talking about a fairer America. They're not talking about more diversity. This is the least racist multi-ethnic country in the world. It is probably the least racist multi-ethnic country or nation ever. To include Alexander's conquering starting with 50,000 Macedonians. That was his dream, of course. Yet there was still rampant racism. Indians didn't like the Macedonians. The Egyptians didn't like the Indians. The Egyptians didn't like the Greeks. The Greeks didn't like Macedonians. They weren't real Greeks. This is the way it has always been forever. Only in America, because you can look at some of these other countries, people are always like, why can't you be like Europe? There are a couple of reasons for that. One, Europe in many areas does not have the population diversity that we do. That's number one. And number two, we are the only country with a political party who seeks to perpetuate the racism in this country to sustain political power. In other words, they don't want it to heal. If it did heal, they would lose their political influence. They would lose their political base. No other country that I know of has eradicated slavery in their country, has gone through a civil rights change, yet still has a single party that perpetuates it on purpose as a political strategy. We are unique in that respect. It doesn't even happen in South Africa anymore. We're alone in that. There have been those in the past, but not like this. Not this long and not continuous and ongoing. What we see in other countries is that we have these racial twists on certain ideologies. They rise to power. They're a regime. They fall out of power. They're no longer a regime. That's what we see. That's the pattern in other places. We do not see these people establish a foothold in the parliamentary system of a government, or, in our case, a watered down republic, and stay there and perpetuate these problems. We have not seen that in other nations. All right.
I just want to make a comment
go ahead.
to somebody who was commenting. Telex, we're not saying what this person is saying is it is a race thing. If Floyd was white, this really wouldn't be an issue.
That's not true. We just found 3 examples yesterday. One specifically with the knee on the neck. The police officer's knee was on the white dude's neck for 12 minutes. You just never hear about it because the media tells you what you need to see and what you don't need to see. And when it comes to Dante Wright, You run from the police with a warrant that's aggravated robbery. You're going to get, and you do not keep your hands where they can see them. It doesn't matter whether you are white, whether you are black. If you are Michael Brown and you try to, it doesn't matter if you're Michael Brown, the black 18-year-old teenager, or you're Michael Brown, the white 18-year-old teenager. If you try to disable a police officer and beat him in the face while he's sitting in his patrol car, you are going to get shot. If you try to run from the police and have an aggravated charge against you and a warrant out for your arrest, and then they cannot see your hands, you are going to get shot. And in that case, she did think it was a taser because you can clearly hear her go, taser, taser. She didn't realize it was her firearm.
She honestly, I think she panicked in the situation, being a woman versus man.
But get me that guy's name. It was like 12 minutes. The officer's knee was on his neck. You just didn't hear about it, man. You just didn't hear about it. The truth is, when it comes to encounters with police officers, there are more whites each year killed than blacks by police officers who are unarmed. That's just true. What the question is the proportion, in respect to their percentage of the population, and why are encounters with police officers higher as a percentage among African Americans in urban America than they are among any other group anywhere else? Doesn't matter if it's urban, whatever. So actually, when all is said and done, you would expect that number to be much higher for whites. And the reason for African Americans, because of how much they represent as far as encounters with police. And I hate to bring her up, but she's right. As Heather McDonald shows, actually what it really kind of indicates is that in many areas there's a conscientious effort to be less what's the word I'm looking for here? To be less aggressive with certain groups of people based on their race. Otherwise, due to how much they represent of total encounters, you would think there would be even more incidents. But there's not. There's not. And I would just, again, what you see on television does not reflect the overall picture. Crime statistics do. Local, FBI, crime statistics are the overall picture. And you won't hear about them because they're not going to tell you about them. The other day, BLM tried to show up for a protest of a white man who was killed unarmed by a police officer.
But they didn't know he was white.
They didn't know he's white. He showed up, kicked it around. We're out of here. The show must go on somewhere else where the victim fits our narrative.
Yeah, where the narrative fits.
That's why they evolved this George Floyd case the way they did. Because they are looking for cases that divide us. Where white America will retreat to their corner, black America will retreat to their corner. And of course, you'll always have crossovers, that are the exception to the rule. Because those cases help their cause the most. They don't like unity. In the beginning, they were like, with the George Floyd thing, this thing almost faded away. I got news for you. Because it really didn't fit it. They evolved and figured out how to spin it up. And then, by the way, the money was already going to the people like Crump and Parks. This is a multi-million-dollar grift. The politicians get the political, the political boost and the political points that they want, while these civil rights lawyers get filthy rich. Filthy rich. It had been going on with Crump in Florida for years before the Trayvon Martin thing even came up. And he would essentially threaten and extort local government into paying off obscene amounts of money that you would never see in a jury trial if you were killed. $27 million for George Floyd in a civil suit is outrageous.
I'm sorry, the man's...
He was never going to be worth $27 million. Understand, when this goes to a normal civil jury, or a judge decides it, there are considerations. How much was he going to make? How much did we take away from his family? What could he have contributed to society? Like, yes, they put a price tag on your life. In no reality would George Floyd or anybody like him who lived his kind of lifestyle, his kind of existence, in no reality would they be worth $27 million if this wasn't if this wasn't so beneficial to the media narrative and the Democratic Party narrative. I'm sorry, that's just true. They put a price tag on all of our lives. I think I was talking to Robert about this the other day. I think the most we had ever seen was like $2 million. Mm-hmm. And I am talking about a productive member of society who earned. I'm not talking about a repeat criminal and drug user.
What a rap sheet. Okay, Jay Patel would like to know, the most annoying thing about all this is all these huge corporations virtue signaling. What is their advantage of doing this?
They're afraid.
Of being burned down.
They're afraid. They're terrified. And honestly, the generation now that is going into the business world, they're ideologically very different than the generations of the past. They were educated in a very different system. They were handed a lot instead of, large. This system has been in place for a while. We're not exactly talking about the Carnegies and the Rockefellers who had to build infrastructure from the ground up. These are people of privilege. I'm sorry, the vast majority of.
Yes.
I'm generalizing, yes.
How dare you, Richard?
And so you have a split between some that are ideologically blind. Just like anybody else is ideologically blind. And you have a split between people who are just terrified. They are afraid.
Lamb Crow, do you think the general public doesn't care about Enlightenment principles like the presumption of innocence, or they just don't know?
I think the general public wants to live their life, and they don't want to have to engage in these philosophical arguments. They have a hope, and I think many of them have a unjustified sense of security, or a false sense of security, that some of these principles are just like self-evident and will last forever, when that's not the case, of course. But I will tell you, I do think the public overall, because Laura, we've polled people on this before, even on the simple question of how often they like real change, and how often things like, principles in the Constitution should be amended, and whether or not judges should follow the law, even in cases where, because we have given them some pretty harsh cases before, even when it's necessary for a sense of fairness to prevail, should a judge still interpret the law, have a strict sense of the law? Should they not, and seek out the most fair result? Overwhelmingly, people will say, no, you have to follow the law. Things like reasonable doubt, they do have a hard time understanding, but the presumption of innocence, they don't. Although, I'd like, we could add that, and then, I like this idea of putting some principles in the new survey, and let's see if there's an age difference, because it has been a little bit, and time is ever changing and ever evolving, so, and views are along with them. I do think you could look, folks, there were people on Twitter yesterday seriously arguing that there is a presumption that members of the jury follow jury instructions, but they were just a few weeks ago not adhering to what you would think. See, I'm talking about legal blue check people. They are lawyers who seem to be foreign to the concept of the presumption of innocence. Some of these very same accounts, wanted to fry Brett Kavanaugh, wanted to burn him at the stake. They didn't seem to have any concept of the presumption of innocence. There's something new here, which is that principles shift along with the needs of the ideology. The goal, the goal, the end game, is more important than any principle that we have to put to the test along the way. So one day you may find yourself, wiping your backside with the principles of the presumption of innocence, and the next day seriously trying to argue that there's a long-standing presumption that members of the jury follow jury instructions. Mm-hmm. First of all, that's crazy. Those two don't even belong in the same, one is far more important than the other. That's number one. Number two, that presumption is a load of crap, and everybody knows it, which is why we have something called, everybody, sequestration.
Yay!
Yay!
Love it.
Incredible. In fact, there have been high-profile juries. There have been instances of high-profile juries who were sequestered, yet still heard about news reports and still heard about, still felt pressures from things like news reports and feedback from the community. So this is if you're that, you will only find yourself that intellectually dishonest and that intellectually incoherent, contradictory, if you are putting an end game before you're putting your principles. If you are putting an ideology before your principles. It's the only way. I think, look, we saw this both sides. The right used to make fun of the Obama followers all the time. They would bend and twist on every issue. Whatever Obama said went. We certainly saw some of that during Donald Trump. No matter what Trump did, he was never wrong. It was 4D chess, sit back, trust the plan, Mueller's a white hat, blah, 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 blah. Right? I mean, come on. It's on both sides. It just so happens on the left, they are true ideologues. And I've told you this before. Conservatism is not an ideology. It's not a true ideology. It doesn't fit the definition of a true ideology. It is a way of life and a belief system. An ideology is very different. And because in conservatism, there are other things, there are higher powers than your, political views, right? There are higher powers. On the left, that is not the case. And they are true ideologues. And that comes first. That fills the gap, that fills the voids where conservatives put other things like religion, faith, family, right? And I'm not saying, of course, there can't be liberals who, cherish family. I'm not saying that. But it is statistically true. It's statistically a fact here,
there
folks.
Are other things that they prioritize.
Yes, it's statistically a fact, right? So,
all right, I got some.
More liberals get abortions. More liberals are likely to have marriages. Dissolve their marriages. The other day, we were just talking about this with the poll from Pew. Right? Liberals are clearly less likely to.
You gotta use your data.
It's just.
I know you like to. And
it's not just
your
liberals.
Statements
it's white educated liberals. Mm-hmm. White educated liberals.
Dark Vader had a interesting question. I guess the question would be, how do we, as conservative/populists, do? Do we start building a system that is parallel to the system, or do we try what they did and infiltrate? Yeah,
that really, I don't want to give advice here on how to take over government. I don't want that to be the end of my YouTube channel.
Is a good discussion.
But listen, the left did not start a parallel system. They created a new one within the old. All right. And we had a great interview on Quite Frankly the other day, and we were talking about election reform, and he said, but Rich, those laws were there. They unilaterally changed those laws. Everybody knows the state legislature is responsible for election law, and yet Jocelyn Benson unilaterally changed the standard for signature verification. Local officials, district, county clerks, down the line, supervisors of elections, whatever you call them in your particular area, they unilaterally decided to change election law. So what good is a law? What good is anything if it's not enforced? And really the answer is the answer to your question. You're right. So you can't just make laws and expect your enemies to enforce them for you. It used to be a time where the law was not applied arbitrary. Well, we live in a post-fairness period. It is arbitrary. You cannot expect your political enemy, even if the law is just and credible, legitimate, you cannot expect your political enemy to enforce them fairly, to apply them in the standards across the board if it doesn't benefit them anymore. We are in the era, Dershowitz put it perfectly yesterday. We are in the era of a corrupted judiciary, a corrupted, not just system of law. It really isn't, the law itself has been corrupted. It has been politicized and corrupted. The only way you can trust it is if you make sure that you and yours are the ones enforcing it. Mm-hmm. And that starts at a local level all the way up. It starts at a local level all the way up. Right? So I mean, my preference, I hope, did I make that clear what I'm saying?
You did good.
I mean, really, does it take a new one? I would at least think that the forces of liberty would at least try to put up a fight before they try to make a new one. I don't see how we bridge this divide. There are too many people who not only don't agree with the basic tenets and principles of Americanism, but they don't even understand them. They're foreign to them. They're much more Soviet in their behavior. They're much more fascist in their behavior. I mean, look at what BLM was saying last night, folks. This is injustice. It took too long. So to BLM, things like due process, the presumption of innocence, trial by jury, a justice system isn't quick. It's not quick enough for me. I want instant gratification. The mob said guilty. Drag the SOB to the street and put a bullet in his head. That's the proposed alternative here.
That's what they really want.
That is it is what they want. Mm-hmm. Can we stop? Can we cut the crap? It is what they want. That is the proposed alternative. This man, it took 11 months. 11 months for the entire process to wrap up and for 3 guilty verdicts to be handed down. That's how the justice system plays out. In fact, the entire thing was rigged against the defendant to begin with. The attorney general was rigged against the defendant. Everything was rigged against the defendant. I mean, I really don't know what else you could want. It's not even a justice system because it wasn't fair to Derek Chauvin. It wasn't. And I think a lot of you may be surprised to hear my own personal views on this. But that's really irrelevant. I would rather a guilty man go free than for one unjust conviction to be handed down on a single citizen.
Amen. Talk about destroying a soul.
One day it may be your family. Mm-hmm. Maybe your friend. It may be you. Maybe you. All right, moving on.
Miss Jenny said, I keep thinking about John Adams representing the soldiers from the Boston Massacre.
Me too, Jenny.
Could you talk about a comparison?
Me too. Sorry, I was telling Laura so I didn't want you guys to hear. But Jenny, me too. So John Adams so believed in you have to understand too, our founders were very well read. Like I made the reference to Cicero before. Adams loved Cicero. He loved him. Felt bad for him too, because here's Cicero trying to say, stop, use your reason. The law is what matters most. Your personal interests cannot supersede the law. Please think about what you're doing. Think about the long-term consequences. And the poor man duped himself into believing most Romans still use their reason. But it was over. That part of the Roman Empire was over. The Republic. The true glory of Rome, it was gone. It was gone because their virtue was gone and because their morals were gone, because their principles were gone. And I think often too, John Adams, and he so loved the law. He so loved justice. Do you know what he did to his practice when he took the British soldier as a defendant? That's excommunicado, man. You guys watch John Wick? You guys Wick fans? Or do you just speak the language? Excommunicato. You're out of there. You are not only are you not going to be in my club anymore, John, the Patriots Club. Not only do we not see you as a loyal colonist Britishman, you are the enemy. His practice suffered greatly. His family suffered greatly. His reputation suffered greatly. It was only until later, and he played the role that he had played, that, what he did was not looked at the same way anymore by the masses, especially the people who were taking part in the revolution. His cousin, Washington, right? The rest of Franklin. The rest of them looked at him as somebody, no, we need this man because we're trying to make an argument that reason comes before passion. That reason is the most important gift that God has given us. Why? Because reason allows us to know our Creator. It is the best gift of all. He gave me reason, so I shall know He exists. And all that comes with it. And for those who don't understand what Jenny's talking about, John Adams, we think of as a patriot now. But he cared so much about the presumption of innocence. He cared so much about due process and fairness that he decided to defend the redcoat. And his personal, put that up against Tyson Foods, by the way, of today, right? Put that up against all those virtue signaling idiots that was in the last question. Mm-hmm. Put that up against the jackass who runs Major League Baseball. Very different breed of man. Very different character. To them, our founders overall, the truth was the most important thing. The truth. Cicero called it the higher law, right?
Yep.
And John Adams said at the time, which is probably, what got her thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And I'm with Adams 100%. I'd rather 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man be found guilty. That is the kind of system that we should want and aspire for.
That's the kind of system that we all created. Well,
it is. Well, they created it.
And
they created
messed it up.
They created it. And by the way, they never would have thought, Washington called one part of the Townsend Acts the Murderous Act. Because it took, if you were charged with some kind of a crime, murder, right? Mm-hmm. Anything, you were now put on a ship. If there were no loyalists around, loyal governors, you were now put on a ship, ferried across the Atlantic, and tried in Britain. And Washington called it the Murderous Act. Because if we're not tried among our own colonists, we're done. And that is where the concept, they held that in such high regard. That's where the trial by jury, and jury of your peers, that's where that came from, folks. And they would have looked at what happened with Derek Chauvin, and they would have said, there's just no way he could get a fair trial here. And it's, the idea, too, change of venue. It's like, that's what the British were trying to do all of the time. Only in a reverse manner, right? It's like the British wanted the venue to be England. And the colonists were saying, can I get a change of venue? Can I get a change of venue? And that's just, sadly, again, another principle that's gotten away from us. I'd ask another way. I need to get a Marco. I need a Marco moment.
Neil Harris asked if, Rich, do you think all that's going on is death by 1,000 cuts?
Yeah.
Or there's a way out of this divisiveness?
Well, I think that is the plan right now, and then eventually what happens, it may still be 1,000 cuts, but you're going to bleed out in one singular event, right? Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Right now, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where we're headed right now. Which is, I think, where what's that phrase? The hour is late. The hour is late here. This is because it's been going on for. So I think the right won an election in 2016, and then kind of duped themselves into thinking that it wouldn't all continue. You have to understand, all of this really predates the Joe Biden administration. It certainly predates the summer of love. It predates Donald Trump. Donald Trump won because civil society was basically falling apart. I mean, it was basically falling apart. We had terror attacks at home, on the reg, right? On the reg. We had terror attacks at home. We had mass protests and the burning of cities, on the reg as well. Problems overseas, economic malaise. That's why Donald Trump won. Sometimes when you come in and fix problems, you get it through you get a false sense of security, right? Like those problems aren't there anymore. The truth is, they ramped a lot of that into high gear once Trump was elected. It was a way to delay and to clog up the system itself, as to delay his agenda, the changes he was trying to implement. And it, the summer of love was just kind of was a culmination of them making it look like the world was falling apart. Between COVID and the unrest, they wanted to give Americans the perception that everything was coming apart at the seams, and we needed to go back to normal. Well, 4 years is a long time in the collective conscience of Americans. I hate to say it. I don't mean to put us down, but it's true. And we had forgotten what normal was, right?
Yeah.
So, I used to use the phrase the seasick voter. And it was like they were they were causing the storm and then complaining the boat was rocking. And their proposal was, get a new captain to change course. Let's go back to normal seas. Donald Trump took us took us in too high swells. Now the boat's rocking and we're going to tip. This puppy's going to sink. But we forgot there were never clear skies, right? It was never a calm sea. It was never, things were not good. There was never a normal. The normal got Donald Trump elected in the first place. But like I said, sadly, 4 years is a long time to Americans. And they forget. Donald Trump came in. He effectively ended the economic malaise. He wiped ISIS off the map. You guys forget about the weekly decapitations, right? Of journalists, by the way. Media. So-called media. Fake-ass media. Propagandists. You forget about that? You forget that your buddies lied about... I mean, how could Reuters be such propaganda? They forget that it was Biden and his crew who vaporized one of their own and then lied about it. They hate Julian Assange. If it wasn't for Julian Assange, you would never know it was your employee, one of your own, your family member, who got vaporized by the U.S. government, who then lied about it because, hey, I'm Barack Obama and I don't have to tell you the truth. I mean, this is really incredible how we can go back and forth like this. So my point is, it never was a normal. It never was a normal. The world was effectively falling apart. And now that they feel emboldened, I think it's probably going to move on from a death by 1,000 cuts, to quick step. It's going to be a quick step now. Before it was little by little. Now they're going to feel emboldened. They're going to keep pushing fast and hard and fast.
Vince Locker would like to know, is the absence of GOP ground troops, i.e. local precincts, folks, etc., a relatively new phenomenon? Or
No.
has this been a norm for a long time?
Yeah.
I wonder if the 1994 Gingrich Revolution, which he essentially nationalized elections, caused GOP to lose focus on their hyper-local stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when you say how long it's been around, at least the last several decades. And I would say maybe they're not. I don't know. That's worth looking into. I know, during the Reagan era that they were very big on grassroots stuff, but that's worth looking into. And I'm not sure predating George W. Bush whether that's the case or not. But I can tell you that the lack of those grassroots positions at least dates back to then. I mean, it was generally that, the GOP really was the party of, I don't know, Laura. I mean, it's like they had that big business image, but it really was more than that. It was a club, a boys' club. It's a freaking boys' club. Sweater wearing, sweater tie. Let's get the golf clubs, shine the shoes, get my caddy, carry my bag. It was a boys' club. So if somebody in local areas kind of already had certain positions, fit those positions, you would not have been able to challenge them anyway, so it didn't even really matter. It only saw a resurgence of grassroots support after Obama. And it wasn't the Obamacare that even did it. It was debt that did it. TARP bailout is where, conservative grassroots really did start to ramp up again. That's a good question, though. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's a great observation, because Newt Gingrich did nationalize the '94 Republican Revolution. He went around and recruited great, solid candidates, and for those who don't know, put it all into a contract called the Contract with America. And his candidates who were running on this ticket, it's like the Republican ticket that year was one ticket, right? Basically, you voted for the Republican because you were voting for the contract, or you weren't. And it was brilliant because Newt didn't recruit and get anybody who wasn't on board with that contract. And he made it very national. That very much is true. I would say, though, it goes beyond just the elections. It's strategy. So when Democrats aren't running people, on the ground level, they are strategizing. For instance, I just brought one up before. Donald Trump is coming to Chicago. He is going to speak to the inner city about why their lives are miserable in some of these areas and neighborhoods. Shut that down. And they mobilize and do things about it. So it really is more of a political strategy. It's well beyond the idea of running someone for office. Donald Trump is elected. He's going to implement all of this stuff. He doesn't go bananas with executive orders, but anything on immigration, which is a direct threat to our political viability as a party. Democrats were so shocked in 2016 because they thought they had the numbers with illegal immigration. They thought that over the years they have effectively replaced you. And it was mathematically impossible for a Republican to win. And they were stunned. So it's like this idea that that's a racist argument, by the way, that Democrats want illegal immigration. They attacked Tucker for it last week. Look at me. Democrats want illegal immigration to replace you. That is not some kind of racist thing. I'm married to a Hispanic woman. She'll still tell you that Democrats want to use her race to replace you so they can get votes. And then they want to make you, they want to make Hispanics a permanent underclass, just like they made Black Americans a permanent underclass.
But they want to use illegal immigrants.
Of course.
Because illegal immigrants have a tendency to come from places that are used to subjugation.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's exactly right. Those governments fit their ideology. Government, rely on them for everything. Mm-hmm. Do what you're told when you are told to do it, right? These are not places of freedom. And by the way, the genius of it is it's not like Venezuelans where they said, all right, enough. And then they want to leave because they said enough. All right. It's Cubans. Same thing. Cubans. They don't want them because those people have stood up for themselves. Right. They want the ones who have been taught that it's all right to rely on the government for basic human needs, like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that very bottom sliver right there. They want you to rely on government for at least that, if not 3 tiers up the pyramid. right? Soon they'll be asking you to develop a personal relationship with them, right? I mean, maybe they'll start these like little programs where you can get some human affection from a .gov website. I mean, don't you think I'm kidding? Give it some time, folks. But in any event, they really were shocked because they didn't think they had those numbers, or they did think that they had those numbers. So when Donald Trump threatened the chain migration, when he threatened illegal immigration, because all you need is to get them here and then the chain takes over. So even if 2 or 3 people from the same family hop the fence, then that chain will take over and that'll turn into 10, will turn into 15, because the extended family will begin to be eligible as time goes on. So anyway, what did they do? They mobilized. It was a political strategy. It wasn't, well, come, 2022, we're going to beat Donald Trump. That wasn't good enough. They got together their grassroots people. They made a stink. They got their rich backers, with the left is always much more willing to go into their pockets than the right. All right. They got their rich backers to fund places like the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU, and they would sue. And the idea was a political strategy to bog down the judiciary branch so he could not move forward. They absolutely knew they were going to hack judges like the one in Hawaii, like California. They stayed in the Ninth Circuit on purpose. They knew the Supreme Court was going to smack them down. The hope was it will be too late. By the time it makes it through all the way up to the high court, it'll be too late. That was a political strategy, and it was well beyond simple elections. That's not good enough. It's just not good enough, right? It's not good enough to stop somebody who uses, multi-pronged, level of attack. But go ahead.
All right. So, oops, I picked the wrong thing. Sorry. Where my questions are. All right.
Hold on one second. So,
it's on.
All right. Gotcha.
Now you missed me.
I'm sorry. I just had to ask you that because it was timing. It's a timing issue.
Oh, fudge. You didn't hear that. Okay, so Sergey Pat wants to switch gears a little bit and wants to know if you are still grim about Gates' survival.
Oof. Why would you do that to me?
Since
you know what you know.
I can't give away insider information.
Why would you do that to me?
I'm just saying. You could just say what you think.
As of right now, no. I'm not. Why don't you ask me again on Monday, Sergey? Let me just put it that way, all right? Why don't you ask me on Monday? Because on Monday I'll know fully. I will tell you this. His response has been effective, okay? And some of the natural progression of the story has gone his way. Like, the FBI uses propaganda journalists as sources to open up investigations. Like his staffers coming across and punching big holes in very key supposed facts that are not holding up. And I think that Chris Cuomo did the biggest favor to Matt Gaetz having that fool on to basically implicate himself in an extortion scheme. That is what he did. Did anybody see that? That was the most awkward interview, is not even the word. So we know he implicated David McGee. That then led to a former intelligence officer for the Air Force. And he basically admitted to everything. He made a comment about how a year earlier he lost 4 people trying to extract Bob Levinson from Iran. Meanwhile, Cuomo is like an idiot. I don't know if he wasn't prepared for it, but he didn't help him cover any of this stuff up, like, of what he was saying. Like, what do you mean you lost 4 people? Are you wait a minute, are you telling us that you put together a team to infiltrate a foreign sovereign nation, okay? The Iranians caught them and killed them, all for a guy that the world widely believes to be dead. I mean, some of the stuff that it was supposed to be in his defense and to hurt Matt Gaetz, it was totally crazy and outrageous. And then also, we'll say this: the view of anonymously sourced articles among even all Americans is abysmal. And in a district like Matt Gaetz's, the fact that there weren't any other shoes to drop and there weren't any on the record or name sources is just not settling well. It's not settling well. So Gaetz was elected with 64% of the vote in 2020 and reelected, and the district is over 50% Republican. As long as he holds and maintains the lion's share of his Republican base, he will survive. This could even backfire among independents in that district. It could even backfire because at this point, the facts went his way so far. He's also a beloved, his father, that family, and I'll be the first to say this because I don't know whatever else is going to come up. But I will say this: I am a Florida guy, and that family has done a lot of good. His father has done a lot of good. There are a lot of once foster and abandoned children who have homes because of his father. I don't know how many people can say that about themselves. How many people can say, as my time as the Senate leader, I did this. I made this much of a difference in someone's life. They clearly were trying to extort them. I mean, it's a nice ring they got going on here. The journalist drops the dime, which gets the corrupt FBI, which is their friends, to open an investigation. Then the friend goes and tries to extort someone for a cause with the promise that they'll get their friends to drop the corrupt investigation their corrupt friends got them to open. I mean, this is something out of a novel, man. Mm-hmm. It's a work of fiction. It's incredible, but a nice little racket they have going on over there. I mean, the idea anybody would still be funding a recovery effort for Bob Levinson is ludicrous. Just ludicrous. But yeah, the way he handled it, and also because there was not another shoe to drop. In fact, the shoes that are dropping have helped him. I'm pretty bullish on his survival as of now. But ask me Monday, and I'll be able to tell you with more certainty. All right? I'll leave it there. Go ahead.
All right. So somebody wants to know, I saw a comment saying Rich sings the intro songs. Is this true?
Sometimes, but no, it's recorded by the Bowen Band, and is the singer's name on the actual recording is Chris Bowen, and it's Bowen Band is the name of the band. But yeah, sometimes I do sing along with that. And actually, never mind. I'm just gonna say you may hear Chris sing a song I wrote soon, which is really cool. I will say that. Because I'm too old for this crap. You know, I love playing the guitar. I love writing songs. I like to sing. I sing fairly well. I just got old. You know, life moves. Things happen. Like, you know, I got older. And you might as well
You don't want to be a rock star?
Yeah, daddy's too old to be a rock star. And you might as well move on. You might as well move on and give it to people. If you do think you have something good, give it to somebody else, you know?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. People believe that there is an institutionalized racism in the USA.
Yeah, there's just no evidence to support that. The fact of the matter is the NYPD is majority minority now. I mean, most major police departments are at least representative of the population they police. At least. And in many major cities, some demographics are overrepresented in those police departments. The statistics simply don't bear that out. They don't. And I want to make a comment while I'm on statistics. the cute little comments from so-called statisticians that say one conviction when there's 15,000 plus police shootings since 1895 or 1995, whatever they say, is not justice. First of all, for a statistician, or a so-called one, to write something like that, shame on you. A police shooting doesn't mean anything. Police have guns for a reason, to shoot bad guys and people who don't obey the law and cause the public to be in danger. All right? Simply stating that it's one out of X number shootings in over X numbers of years means nothing. Even unarmed shootings means nothing. We're talking about bad shoots versus good shoots. They call them, in the business, it was a clean shoot, meaning it was a justified or justifiable shooting. You can be unarmed and still legitimately find yourself shot. All right? I mean, these are not black and white things. And we hold these police officers to such unrealistic standards. And this is from somebody who, look, guys, I don't believe all cops are good. And I do believe some have chips on their shoulders. I couldn't stand them when I was a kid. Usually when you don't like cops, it's because you're doing something wrong. All right? That's just the reality of it. That's been my own life experience. And the numbers just simply don't bear this genocide on young black men thing out. The systemic racism is a really crafty genius. In fact, creation, it's a myth, but it's a creation because it's so hard to disprove with its ever-evolving definition. So you could say, this is systemically racist. And I can say, well, police shootings are systemically racist? Not really. Let's take a look at the numbers. But then you can evolve, after I debunk that, you can evolve into, well, no, I'm including this too, and this is systemic. This is also proof of systemic racism. It's brilliant. And it's brilliant for two reasons. That reason, and the second is, it allows those who are in charge of this system to blame a systemically racist system for people's problems, even though they're never identified as the ones who are in charge of the system. So it allows people who are in charge of the system to say, the system is out to get you, and never have to worry about anyone saying, wait a minute, you're the system. It's brilliant. Because, oh no, not me, you see. No. It's this etherical enemy called systemic racism. And that's the problem. That's your enemy. Not me. Not the one who runs the system. Right? So, black police chief, still systemically racist. It doesn't matter. The system's systemically racist. Systemic means, folks, that it is broad across, like if we're talking about an institution, that it's widely distributed among the institution, that it is embedded culturally and through its worldview and how it operates. That is what systemically means. So what they're trying to tell you is that in police departments around the country, even in major, because these are urban centers that keep making the news. It's not Mama Joe's Podunk police station out in, 1230 rural America. These are urban cases in so-called blue progressive America. They are the system. And what they're saying is there is wide racism throughout those systems. The DA, the police departments, that it's cultural among them. Well, wait a minute. Elect another district attorney. Who the hell elected that district attorney again? Right! You did! Incredible. In some places, you even elect the judges. Well, if the judges are systemic, if there's systemic racism in the judiciary, that's on you. You elected them. That's on the judges. Oh, no, not me. I'm progressive. It's brilliant. It's this ethereal fiction fictional concept that can't be pinned down. They somehow managed to blame Billy Bob with a badge in Arkansas for a shooting that happens in Minneapolis. It's a brilliant tactic. You have to give it to them. It's the same reason why they need gun control, even though they bought those guns off of a shipment from a corrupt politician who absolutely probably has a D after their name. But no, it was Billy Bob who sold this kid a gun at a gun show in Arkansas when he was 13 years old. Folks, that doesn't happen. It does not happen. These guns are never traced back to 123 Pawn in Podunk, America. There is no gun show loophole in Florida, in all of some of these other places where we do still have these gun shows. The only way you're walking out of there with a firearm is if you already have a concealed weapons permit. The gun show loophole is just about as real as systemic racism. It doesn't exist. It's fabricated to misdirect blame that they hope you are too stupid to see falls on them. This is progressive blue America. If the system is racist, then blame who? White America? Conservative America? Donald Trump? Who elected the mayor? The city elected the mayor. If the mayor's office, if City Hall is systemically racist, then take it up with City Hall. This is nuts. Just as same reminds me of this crap with Stacey Abrams in Georgia. It was Brian, and I hate Brian Kemp, you know that. But it's personally, I don't hate, mean hate. I can't stand Brian Kemp. I don't like him as a politician or a man. And I don't like the Republican Party he represents. All right? But the bottom line is, it was never Brian Kemp's fault that so-called voter purges were happening in the Atlanta metro area. Each area has a secretary of election. They are responsible for their voter rolls. The Secretary of State simply gathers the data, the rolls that they kick up. And from there, the Secretary of State tabulates that information and makes it available per the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. It has nothing to do with Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp did not get a team of people while he was Secretary of State and go, target Atlanta, target Fulton County, purge the voter rolls in those areas. Yet somehow they made Brian Kemp the straw man for something that was the responsibility of a blue, progressive Secretary of Election. The beef was never a real beef because Georgia's rolls are dirty. But even if you did have a beef, you take it up with the people who are responsible for that. They are creating straw men to avoid responsibility. And they want white people and black people to kill each other instead of them talking to each other and with each other. Because then, God forbid, they may talk a little. They may have real discussion and then find out, holy crap, the problem isn't us. It's them. And it doesn't matter what color you are. It's not a white versus black or brown versus Asian. It's top versus down. They just want you to think like that. Because anger clouds reason. Anger clouds judgment. Blaming the other tears apart nations. And you cannot have a nation under these conditions. You cannot have a nation who doesn't agree on basic tenets, basic principles of what makes you that nation. Cannot claim to be a nation of laws if society caves to mobs and mobocracy. You're no longer a nation of laws anymore. And that really, I mean, with that, let's take one more. It's 12:45. Let's take one more. I can see that.
You surprised me
I
on
can
that
see
one.
that over there. But let's take one more, because even there seems to be a lot of it's just a lot of misinformation.
Well, misinformation keeps people dumb.
Yeah.
So then you trust
Ignorant.
You trust the person that tells you they know better than you.
The combination of ignorance and hatred is going to do us in. Ignorance and anger is going to do us in. It's like a deadly combination. I feel like we're the guy who first put together the ingredients for gunpowder and really don't know what we're playing with, and it's just going to go off in our face. Yeah, that's what I feel like is happening to us right now.
All right. A question that we missed before is CJ wants to know, what do you think about Ukraine joining NATO?
Yeah. Ukraine's a corrupt country. I think NATO is corrupt as well. I mean, there's really NATO is a self-perpetuating organization now. There is no point to NATO anymore. The Warsaw Pact is gone. NATO was a balancing act, a balancing coalition that was put together during the Cold War to balance against the Warsaw Pact. Russia and their allies in Eastern Europe and beyond. And there is no more Warsaw Pact. So there's no point for NATO. We need to really think about this world in a much different way. Barack Obama famously mocked Mitt Romney and said, the 1980s want their foreign policy back. There was a little bit of truth to that. Honestly, there was. When it comes to Russia, anyway. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of truth to that. Russia is a waning superpower. Superpower is measured by its relative. So, how much power do you have relative to other superpowers or regional hegemons, latent, military, etc., etc.? Russia has no ability to project their power across the stopping power of water, which is the aircraft carrier. Everything they have is old, it's bust. They have a lot of latent power because they still have a large population, and they have latent power in their code, in who they are. They're strong people, strong-willed people, but they have very few natural resources, not a diverse economy, and they are a waning superpower. China is the problem, and China's allies are the problem. And we stop thinking about NATO. Germany can't even have an army. We're still at that point. The strongest country in Central, probably all of Europe, outside of Russia, is not even allowed to use their latent power and their vast natural resources. NATO is a joke. It's a joke now. The rest of the countries are weak, feeble, and inept, and ineffective. We have two allies that we don't make any use of. One of them particularly I would trust. Germany I would not trust. And they have proven themselves to be untrustworthy even post-World War II, time and time again. They're not allowed to have a military because they started 2 world wars. Of course, if you're a realist, you understand they're encircled by the rest of Europe. So they were not acting like some irrational madmen. Hitler was crazy. Yeah, he was. But he was acting very rational as far as foreign policy goes. Germany was encircled by enemies. Aggression to expand your borders was an effort to self-preservation, not really for the sake of aggression. And that's why you saw Germany in World War I behave very much like the Germany of World War II. They were trying to increase their relative power, but they're not even allowed. We took them totally out of the equation. Now, the other one we took out of the equation is Japan. A war culture. An incredibly powerful ally with thousands of years of history of proud warrior culture, and they hate the Chinese. Proud history of fighting the Chinese, invading and liberation. And in the post-World War II NATO era, we've promised both of these people that we will take care of them. We will defend them. Well, who's going to defend them when we need defending? We can barely defend ourselves. We're not as strong as you think we are. We're not. Not anymore, folks. Not anymore. Our latent power is a joke. You might as well, with the mask-wearing Marys and the beta culture, you might as well take half of the male population right out of the equation. I'm serious.
I know.
At least in Russia and China, their men still care about culture of strength, and they do. And so their latent power, you can write confidently down and do an equation like people do. Not in this country. Not in this country. Not anymore. So I say NATO, and let the allies who can defend themselves, who can be useful allies, let them be. Turn them loose. We already pushed Putin in the arms of Xi Jinping.
Mm-hmm.
They're Pungyos now, man. Pungyo is friend in Chinese, in Mandarin. Pungyo, what a Pungyo. They're friends now. Who the hell's going to help us balance against that? We need help balancing against just China. Where many, if you're not going to school and basically exhausting the resources of your enemies, the scholastic resources of your enemies, you're learning Wing Chun or something because you're either going to be a cop or you're in the army. That's what their male population does. They have nothing better to do, so they practice doing backflips off of APCs at 30 miles per hour. Yeah, okay. That we're going to hold up real well against that. We're going to hold up real well against that, right? Send Gavin Newsom out there. See if he can't hair gel them to death.
Oh, you went there. That's funny. I love you.
You know? This is a joke. We're you know, I mean, the Ukraine's great as an ally. They're corrupt though, so I would only see them further corrupting NATO if they did get a place in NATO. It's very hard to say there's a good guy and a bad guy in a place like Ukraine. It's just, I told you that it always is. There's no real thing. There are bad guys and there are worse guys, and there are some that do try but then end up, you know, just engulfed by the system. And I just don't see any benefit. NATO, like the EU, I really think the bicycle theory applies to both. Bicycle theory is when you need to keep adding momentum to it, otherwise you topple over, right? The EU very much is proving to be a bicycle, right? You can't keep adding member nations forever, and then God forbid one of the powerful ones wants to leave, you really become ineffective and useless. You can't do anything. NATO is filled with a bunch of member nations that really can't do jack. And especially now that Donald Trump is gone, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was textbook realism. Not only because they made it a joke that he was going to force them to pay their burden, right? Every NATO member nation has a burden to pay. We still pay the vast majority, but they have a burden to pay, percentage of their GDP, right? And they weren't doing it, and we were just eating it. And everybody thought when Donald Trump said, I'm going to make the NATO nations pay their burden share, everybody's like, this is crazy. You're going to insult their allies. And, you know, they'll never do it. They'll never agree. Oh, yes, they will. They have no other choice. Not only was it never a question, of course, Angela Merkel was going to pay up. She has no choice. Everybody else who wasn't was going to pay up. They had no choice. All they ever needed was a president they knew was dead serious. You don't pay up, you're out. I'm not coming to your rescue. You don't pay up, you're out. I'm moving that base out of Ramstein. How much money you make from that base? I wonder how many American GIs stuffed the pockets of your German citizens. Yeah, I'm going to take Ramstein out of there because you're out. Of course they were going to buckle. They didn't have a choice. You were just duped again into believing a certain status quo was okay and unchangeable. That was never true. Yeah, anyway, like I said, the hell with NATO. It needs to be reformed into something else. And we have two allies, India being the other one, that we need to turn loose. We need to turn loose. Let them become what they can become. Especially Japan. You notice everything made in China breaks, everything made in Japan lasts forever. You ever notice that?
Irony.
Your toaster can't last a year, but that car will run for 25.
At least.
Make sure you give it an oil change. It's good to go. Change the pads.
Brake pads and oil changes.
It's good to go. Run forever. Everything that made in China just fall apart. So turn them loose. We need to reshape how we think of not just foreign policy, but security studies and our allies. Yeah, we really do. And we've become ineffective at that because there's a foreign policy establishment, just like there is, and they create a status quo, just like there is with everything else. And they don't want that evolution. They don't want that change. I mean, there are still people who have, their expertise is in Russia. They are useless if Russia is not a boogeyman. Mm-hmm. They thought the Cold War would go on forever. I mean, look, it's just, I don't want to spit out. No, we'll leave it at that. Yeah. All right, so it's 12:56. Don't forget to join the People's Pundit community on Locals and to subscribe on YouTube. It did catch up almost all the way. I think I may know how to make it better for next time. But if you guys are around, maybe we'll pop in some tests. We were testing, so want to go on air. Maybe we'll just do it with Locals. But if you guys are around, we'll almost have this something different between what we do with Barnes and what we do with what Inside the Numbers and what are the odds. Something different there. Almost have it narrowed down clearly, but still need some work. All right, but still subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. You hit that notification bell. I did get a lot of complaints about that notification bell. Others are too. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, just keep checking up regularly with the social media. Maybe they do it on purpose. Maybe they don't. Folks, I don't really know. But even we get our own notifications late. So I hear you. I know what you're talking about. We didn't do Facebook today, but we typically do. So if you really want to keep up with it, Facebook Live does notify you right away. Hey, so-and-so is going live on Facebook. You have to be on Facebook to see it. But, I mean, it happens with us right away. And then outside of that, just stick with Locals. Fantastic press release from Ruben yesterday. Congratulations, Ruben. I mean, big seed money. This is great news for independent content creators who do not want to be censored and do not want to be influenced into giving people content that they know is not true, or worse, omitting content that they somehow feel they're not allowed to give to their followings and their consumers and their communities. That's crap. And so far, Locals is so much better and has been so much better at fulfilling the original promises that big tech made when they developed these social media companies. Because they came through on nothing when it comes to the positive, and all the fears that from the negative have come to fruition. Censorship, toxicity, did not end up in greater thought, and wider distributed information. No. It ended up in restricting information, censoring people and information, targeting, persecution, prosecution, and sowing more disunity. Right? Right. Did not end up in us understanding each other more. Absolutely not. It created others where others didn't exist. Like we talked about today. That's probably the takeaway from the show today. That some things are grossly predictable because of who we become, what we've become, and that all of this is a complete charade to distract us from the real issues, the fabrications of concepts and enemies and straw men, so that, God forbid, we were to find out who the real problem is in this country, which is them. They are the problem. They are the problem. So with that, I'm going to kick rocks with Bad Habit. All right, we'll see you back on definitely Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have Dawn on. Robert and I want to sneak on a show. What's Eric's? What does Eric got coming up? I mean, Eric's show's probably good. By the way, if you haven't been checking out Robert's feedback on the Viva Fry or Viva Barnes Law streams, they've been great. They've been great. All right. So that, and then of course, unstructured Eric Hunley. He's gonna have on go.
Live stream 5:30 p.m. will be Dr. John Johnson of Edgeworth Economics. Did you know the average salary for mayors in the U.S. has been showed to be $62,000, whereas the average for deputy mayors was $83,000? Did you know 93% of drivers think they are above average? Have you heard that in Miami people are born Latino and die Jewish? Dr. John Johnson answers these questions and more. Data and statistics can be a helpful tool or manipulated to mean anything.
Absolutely. The perversion of science and data. So don't forget to check it out. Unstructured Eric Hunley, 5:30, right? 5:30. All right. And with that, I'm out of here. I will see you guys soon. We will reconvene on Inside the Numbers at 11 a.m. But like I said, guys, I think that we're going to try to do some stuff. So, we can always shoot the you-know-what and kick back and forth some stuff. Oh, don't forget to support the Public Polling Project if you can. We always greatly appreciate it. You can do so by going to bigdatapoll.com/Public Polling Project. That's going to redirect you to the old link anyway.
Yes.
But we wanted one that was easy. bigdatapoll.com/Public Polling Project. We're going to hit the Second Amendment this time. All right. Not just gun control. We're going to hit the Second Amendment. And I think it's a great idea to talk because this dovetails into that Second Amendment questions we wanted to ask. Let's talk about the principles and tenets of things. And maybe, do people care about the presumption of innocence anymore? Which one is more important to people? Fairness or justice, right? What is your? Maybe we can even give them definitions of justice and see which one fits what they believe the true definition, because it's just so hard to define, right? And it's been perverted quite a bit over the years. We're certainly not the first society to do that, but generally speaking, that would be a very interesting survey. And then, of course, we'll always keep the stuff we've been tracking, trust in institutions, Biden's approval generally on different issues, of course. We'll keep tabs on that stuff, right? So if you can support it, we'd appreciate it. And we'll kick one off hopefully before the summer. Because we're in April. If we could get one in May, that would be fantastic. And then we'll know we could do one in the summer or so and then wrap it into the fall. That's a good track. That's a good tracking period.
And it's like an accurate, so you get an accurate.
Yeah, you really do get right. You do, because early spring and late spring, that's a big period. Then you have the summer and people are distracted, but still things are going on. Then it will give you an accurate viewpoint. Really, really would. All right, with that, I'm out. Speaking of the Bowen Band, here they are, Bad Habit. We'll see you on Friday, folks.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife. So give in to the need and leave it all behind.
Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow